The research station floated silently in the Viridian sector, surrounded by stars that had witnessed 1,000,000 years of galactic history. Inside the station, Dr. Velterra carefully examined an ancient artifact that glowed with soft blue light. Her insectoid form moved gracefully between workstations as her research team documented their findings. The Zytharians were peaceful creatures, known throughout the galaxy for their scientific achievements and gentle nature. They had no weapons, no soldiers, no understanding of war. For 3 months, Velterra and her team had studied these mysterious objects left behind by a civilization that vanished long ago. Suddenly, the alarms shattered the peaceful silence. Red lights flooded the corridors as warning sirens screamed through every deck. Velterra's assistant ran toward her, his antennae trembling with terror. Ships dropping out of hyperspace. 7 vessels. They're attacking us. Velterra's heart pounded as she looked at her screen. The Krillax Dominion. Every species in the galaxy knew about the Krillax. They were reptilian warriors, cold and merciless, who took what they wanted without hesitation. They had been pushing against Galactic Council territory for years, growing bolder with each attack. The station shook violently as energy weapons struck the shields. Velterra knew they had minutes at best before the Krillax boarded. Her people scattered in panic, desperately trying to reach escape pods that didn't exist. Send a distress call. All Council frequencies. Velterra shouted over the noise. Her communications officer worked frantically at his console. Broadcasting now. Multiple Council ships are responding, but they're all too far away. Wait, there's one ship in range. The UNSC Vigilance. It's a human destroyer on patrol. How far? 16 minutes at maximum speed. But Captain, it's only one ship. The Krillax have 7 warships. 7. Velterra felt her hope crumble. Humans. The newest members of the Galactic Council. They had only been traveling through space for a century, barely long enough to explore beyond their own solar system. What could one small human ship do against an entire Krillax battle group? Another explosion rocked the station. Hull breaches on 3 decks. The Krillax were already boarding. Far across the sector, Captain Jiwoo Kim stood on the bridge of the Vigilance, staring at the distress signal that pulsed urgently on her screen. She was a young captain with sharp eyes and a reputation for making difficult decisions. Captain, Council Command is ordering us to hold position, said Commander Taehyun Park, her second-in-command. They recommend we wait for backup. 7 Krillax warships against 1 destroyer? It's a suicide mission. Jiwoo's expression remained calm, but her hands tightened into fists. How many people on that station? 43 civilians. All Zytharian scientists. No weapons, no combat training. And if we wait for backup? Taehyun hesitated. The nearest fleet is 42 minutes away. The Krillax will have finished their raid by then. Based on their history, they don't leave witnesses. Jiwoo looked around her bridge. Lieutenant Hanol Cho at Tactical Weapons. Ensign Minji Song at Communications. Chief Engineer Hyunwoo Lee monitoring the engines. They were all young just like her. They all knew what she was about to decide. Status of the Vigilance? All weapons ready. Shields at maximum. Engines at 100% capacity. Jiwoo took a deep breath. Then she pressed the button on her command console. Set course for the research station. Maximum speed. We're going in. Captain, the odds. I know the odds, Commander. But those people called for help and we're the only ship that can reach them. I won't let them die because we were too afraid to try. Taehyun looked at his captain for a long moment, then smiled slightly. Understood. Changing course now. The Vigilance turned sharply, its engines blazing bright as it accelerated toward the battle zone. Immediately, automated warning systems across the sector began broadcasting. Alert, human warship inbound to contested zone. Throughout nearby space, various species detected the warning. Some ignored it. Humans were newcomers, insignificant in the grand scale of galactic power. But others felt a cold shiver of concern. They had heard the stories. They knew about the Seoul incident 20 years ago, when a single human escort ship fought 9 pirate vessels to protect a colony transport. The human ship was destroyed, but so were all 9 pirates. Humans didn't retreat. Humans didn't surrender. Humans fought until they won or until they died. And now a human warship was racing toward a battle it couldn't possibly win. On the Vigilance bridge, Captain Jiwoo Kim watched the countdown. 14 minutes until they reached the station. She activated the ship-wide speaker. All hands, battle stations. We're going to save those researchers and we're coming home. That's not a request, that's an order. The Vigilance flew through the darkness, carrying 43 souls toward impossible odds. But humans had survived impossible odds before. Warmaster Threxus stood in the command center of his flagship, watching the holographic display with satisfaction. The Zytharian research station was defenseless, exactly as expected. His soldiers were already cutting through the outer airlocks. In minutes, they would claim the ancient artifacts and eliminate all witnesses. Another successful raid for the Krillax Dominion. Warmaster, we have detected an incoming vessel, his tactical officer reported, his scaled face showing concern. A human destroyer. The UNSC Vigilance. Estimated arrival in 12 minutes. Threxus laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the command center. One ship. One destroyer against my battle group of 7 warships? Let them come. We'll add their wreckage to our collection. But his intelligence officer, a younger Krillax named Vexer, pulled up data files on his console. Warmaster, perhaps you should review the human file before dismissing them. Why would I waste time reading about primitives who barely discovered space travel a century ago? Threxus growled. Vexer's clawed fingers moved across his screen. Because their record is unusual, sir. Humans have been members of the Galactic Council for only 97 years, yet they have already been involved in 17 military incidents. 17 losses, you mean? No, sir. 17 victories. Or more accurately, 17 situations where they refused to lose, even when they should have. Threxus moved closer to examine the data. What he saw made his blood run cold despite his warrior pride. The human homeworld, Earth, had a history unlike any other species in the galaxy. While most civilizations developed peacefully once they achieved basic technology, humans had fought each other continuously for thousands of years. They had more than 300 words for warfare in their primary language alone. They had weapons ranging from sharpened rocks to nuclear bombs capable of destroying entire cities. They fought themselves? Threxus asked in disbelief. Constantly, sir. Major wars every few decades. Minor conflicts almost continuously. They divided themselves by land, by religion, by ideology, by skin color. They found reasons to fight that other species would consider meaningless. Vexer scrolled through more files. Their most recent global war killed over 60 million of their own kind. They created weapons so terrible that using them would destroy their entire planet. Yet they built these weapons anyway and came within minutes of using them multiple times. Threxus felt uneasy. A species that would build planet-killing weapons and aim them at themselves was either insane or incredibly dangerous. What about the Sol incident? Vexer continued. 20 years ago, a pirate fleet of 9 ships attacked a human colony transport near their home system. The transport had one escort, a small frigate called the Defiant. By all military logic, the escort should have retreated and called for help. What did it do? It charged directly at the pirate fleet. Alone. The captain sent the colony ship away and then attacked 9 warships with his single frigate. He used ramming maneuvers, suicide tactics, and weapons fired at point-blank range. When Galactic Council peacekeepers arrived 2 hours later, the Defiant was a floating wreck with no survivors. But all 9 pirate ships were destroyed. The colony ship escaped without a single casualty. The command center fell silent. Every Krillax warrior present understood what that meant. Humans would sacrifice themselves to protect others. They would fight impossible battles not because they could win, but because they refused to accept defeat. There's more, sir, Vexer said quietly. Human psychology reports indicate they have a concept called proportional response. But they define it differently than we do. When attacked, they don't respond with equal force. They respond with overwhelming force. They have a saying in their military doctrine, peace through superior firepower. Threxus stared at the countdown timer. 10 minutes until the human ship arrived. He had 7 warships. The humans had 1 destroyer. The mathematics clearly favored the Krillax. But mathematics didn't account for a species that had spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of killing. Mathematics didn't measure the determination of creatures who would rather die fighting than surrender. Warmaster, should we withdraw? Asked his second-in-command. Threxus's pride wouldn't allow retreat. He was a Krillax warrior. He had raided 40 systems and never fled from battle. He wouldn't start now because of 1 primitive ship. No. We finish the raid quickly, then we prepare for combat. All ships to battle formation. Charge all weapons. If the humans want to fight, we'll give them one they won't survive. But even as he gave the orders, Threxus felt something unfamiliar crawling through his mind. Something he hadn't experienced in his 30 years as a war master. Doubt. On the research station, Dr. Velterra and her team huddled in the artifact vault as Krillax soldiers cut through the reinforced doors. The sound of plasma torches grew louder with each passing second. Then her emergency communicator crackled to life. A human voice, calm and steady, spoke through the static. Research Station Viridian, this is Captain Jiwoo Kim of the UNSC Vigilance. Hold tight. We're 8 minutes out. Help is coming. Velterra didn't know much about humans. She had never met one before. But something in that voice, that absolute certainty, made her believe. The Zytharians pressed closer together and waited. Outside, the Krillax continued cutting through the door. And somewhere in the darkness of space, a human warship raced toward them at maximum speed, ready to fight 7 ships to save 43 strangers. The Vigilance dropped out of faster-than-light travel exactly where Krillax military doctrine predicted it would arrive. Warmaster Threxus smiled with satisfaction as his sensors detected the human destroyer at the edge of weapons range. Predictable. These primitives knew nothing about proper space combat. All ships, assume standard battle formation, Threxus commanded. We'll overwhelm them with coordinated fire. This will be over quickly. His 7 warships moved into position, creating a deadly wall of firepower. Against this formation, the single human destroyer didn't stand a chance. Threxus prepared to give the order to fire. Then something unexpected happened. The human ship didn't slow down. It accelerated. Warmaster, the human vessel is increasing speed, his tactical officer reported with confusion. They're heading directly toward us. They're not even trying to evade. Threxus leaned forward, studying his display. The Vigilance was accelerating to ramming speed, aimed straight at his flagship like a missile. His eyes widened as he understood the human intention. They're going to ram us. Emergency maneuver. Move. The Krillax flagship lurched violently to the side, thrusters firing at maximum power. The sudden movement disrupted the entire battle formation as other ships scattered to avoid collision. Threxus's carefully organized line dissolved into chaos. But the ramming run had been a trick. At the last possible second, the Vigilance flipped upside down and unleashed every missile it carried. Hundreds of solid-fuel rockets streaked across the space between the ships, moving too fast to intercept. 2 Krillax cruisers exploded as missiles tore through their hulls. The weapons were primitive by galactic standards, using simple kinetic warheads instead of advanced plasma technology. But they were fast, cheap, and deadly when fired at point-blank range. The Vigilance spun through the scattered Krillax formation like a predator among prey. Its point-defense guns shredded attacking fighters. Its railguns, weapons that most civilized species had abandoned centuries ago as too crude, punched through energy shields that were designed to stop laser and plasma weapons. On the Krillax flagship, Threxus watched in horror as his tactical display lit up with damage reports. 2 cruisers destroyed. 3 more damaged. Fighter squadrons decimated. And the human ship continued its violent dance through his fleet, firing, spinning, evading with movements that seemed almost random but were terrifyingly effective. How are they doing this? Threxus shouted. One ship cannot fight like this. His tactical officer studied the human attack patterns with growing dread. Warmaster, they're not fighting like a military vessel. They're fighting like a wild animal. They're targeting our weapons and engines, trying to cripple us. But they're also going for killing blows whenever possible. They're trying to disable and destroy us at the same time. Threxus finally understood. Humans didn't follow the rules of civilized warfare. They had no concept of honorable combat or measured response. They fought the way their ancestors had fought on their violent homeworld, using every dirty trick and desperate tactic they could imagine. The Vigilance suddenly launched metallic chaff and decoys made from cargo containers wrapped in reflective material. Krillax targeting systems locked onto false targets while the real ship slipped away. Then it used the research station's gravity to whip around in a tight arc, coming at the Krillax formation from an unexpected angle. 3 ships, continue the station raid, Threxus ordered, his pride wounded but his tactical sense intact. The rest, focus all fire on that human ship. Destroy it. 4 Krillax warships turned their full attention to the Vigilance. Energy weapons lit up the darkness of space. The human destroyer's shields flared and failed. Hull plating burned away. Atmosphere vented from multiple breaches. On the Vigilance bridge, alarms screamed from every station. Captain Jiwoo Kim gripped her command chair as the ship shuddered under the relentless assault. Hull breaches on decks 3 through 7. Lieutenant Hanol Cho reported. Primary weapons offline. Shield generators at 15%. Captain, 3 Krillax ships have docked with the research station, Ensign Minji Song added. They're boarding now. Jiwoo looked at her tactical display. Her ship was dying. The Krillax had superior numbers and firepower. By every measure of military science, she had already lost this battle. But humans didn't accept defeat easily. Commander Taehyun, she said calmly, prepare boarding teams. 20 Marines in assault pods. Target the research station. The bridge crew stared at her in shock. Board an enemy-held station while fighting a space battle? It was madness. It violated every rule of naval warfare. Captain, we can't spare the personnel, Taehyun protested. We need everyone to keep the ship running. Those scientists are dying right now while we fight out here, Jiwoo said firmly. We came here to save them, not just delay their deaths. Launch the Marines. Taehyun hesitated only a moment, then nodded. Aye, Captain. Boarding teams away. 20 assault pods launched from the Vigilance, streaking toward the research station. The Krillax intercepted several, but enough got through. Inside those pods, human Marines checked their weapons and prepared for close combat. Sergeant Donghyun Rodriguez gripped his rifle tightly. He had volunteered for this mission knowing he might not return. But that was the job. That was what humans did. They didn't leave people behind. The assault pods struck the station's hull like hammers. Cutting torches burned through metal. Marines poured into corridors where Krillax soldiers waited. And the real fighting began. The Marines hit the station corridors with controlled aggression that shocked the Krillax soldiers. Sergeant Donghyun Rodriguez led his squad through the narrow passages, his rifle barking sharp cracks that echoed off metal walls. The sound was primitive compared to energy weapons, just controlled chemical explosions hurling metal, but terrifyingly effective. The Krillax had expected the humans to fight honorably, standing in the open like civilized soldiers. Instead, the Marines used every shadow, every corner, every piece of cover. They set traps using cargo containers and explosive charges. They attacked from ventilation shafts. They fought in ways that no military academy in the galaxy would teach. They're everywhere. A Krillax soldier shouted into his communicator before a human appeared behind him from a maintenance tunnel and took him down. Rodriguez's squad reached a junction where 6 Krillax held position. A frontal assault would be suicide. So Rodriguez didn't attack frontally. He sent 2 Marines through the ceiling ducts while another used a plasma cutter to breach the wall from an adjacent room. The Krillax suddenly faced threats from 3 directions at once and fell back in confusion. In orbit, the Vigilance continued its desperate fight. The ship was barely holding together. Fires burned on multiple decks. The engineering section reported casualties mounting. Chief Engineer Hyun-Woo Lee worked frantically to keep the engines running while half his team lay dead or wounded around him. Captain, we can't take much more, Commander Taehyun Park reported, blood running down his face from a head wound. Hull integrity at 30%. Weapons systems failing. Life support critical on decks 4 through 6. Captain Jiwoo Kim watched her ship dying around her. 2 of her bridge officers were dead. The main view screen showed cracks spreading across its surface. But she couldn't stop fighting. Not while her Marines were still on that station. Divert all remaining power to engines, she ordered. And prepare the self-destruct sequence. The bridge crew turned to stare at her. Taehyun's eyes widened. Captain, you can't mean? If we're going down, we're taking them with us, Jiwoo said quietly. Set collision course for the Krillax flagship. All hands to escape pods on my mark. On the research station, Dr. Velterra heard explosions and gunfire growing closer. The Krillax had nearly cut through the vault door. She and her researchers huddled together, knowing these were likely their final moments. Then the sounds changed. Human voices shouting in their strange language. More gunfire but moving away from the vault. The plasma cutting stopped. Sergeant Rodriguez appeared in the doorway, his armor scorched and dented. Dr. Velterra? I'm Sergeant Rodriguez, United Nations Space Command. We're here to get you out. Behind him, his Marines formed a defensive perimeter. There were only 8 of them left from the original 20. Their armor showed battle damage. Several were wounded but still fighting. The Krillax have reinforcements coming, Rodriguez said, checking his ammunition. We need to hold this position until extraction. But your ship, Velterra said, having monitored the space battle. It's being destroyed. Rodriguez smiled grimly. Yeah, well, humans are stubborn like that. We don't quit. The Krillax counterattack came minutes later. Dozens of soldiers trying to retake the vault. The Marines met them with disciplined fire and desperate courage. When Private Ji-won Park ran out of ammunition, she used her combat knife. When Corporal Subin Lee took a plasma bolt to the leg, he dragged himself to cover and kept firing. Rodriguez saw his squad falling one by one. They were outnumbered 5-1, fighting an enemy that had them surrounded. By every tactical measure they should surrender. But surrendering wasn't in the human vocabulary. Fall back to the vault, Rodriguez ordered. Use the doorway as a choke point. The Marines retreated in good order, making the Krillax pay for every meter of corridor. Rodriguez was the last through the door, laying down covering fire until his rifle clicked empty. In orbit, the Vigilance made its final run. War Master Threxus watched in disbelief as the human destroyer, trailing fire and debris, accelerated directly toward his flagship. All ships, fire everything, he screamed. Stop that ship. Energy weapons hammered the Vigilance. Explosions tore through its hull. The bridge decompressed. Captain Jiwoo Kim, wearing an emergency pressure suit, held onto her command chair as the universe tried to tear her ship apart. Evacuation complete, Taehyun reported from his own suit. All surviving crew in escape pods. Good, Jiwoo said. She looked at her burning bridge one last time. Computer, activate self-destruct. Authorization Kim Tango 74 Alpha. Self-destruct armed, the computer responded. Detonation in 30 seconds. Abandon ship, Jiwoo ordered. She and Taehyun ran for the escape pod as the countdown ticked away. Behind them, the Vigilance, more wreckage than ship, continued its collision course with the Krillax flagship. 20 seconds. The escape pod launched, thrusters firing hard to get clear of the blast radius. 10 seconds. Threxus realized too late that the human captain had never intended to survive. The destroyer wasn't trying to win. It was trying to ensure the Krillax lost. 5 seconds. Brace for impact, Threxus shouted. The Vigilance struck the flagship's engineering section at full speed. For one frozen moment, nothing happened. Then the human ship's nuclear reactor detonated like a newborn star. The explosion lit up the Viridian sector like a second sun. The Krillax flagship tore apart from the inside, its hull peeling away in massive chunks of superheated metal. The blast wave caught 2 other Krillax cruisers, crippling them instantly. Debris spread across thousands of kilometers, glowing like fireflies in the darkness. War Master Threxus died without ever understanding how a single primitive destroyer had defeated his battle group. His final thought was simple confusion at how badly he had underestimated the humans. On the research station, Sergeant Rodriguez felt the entire structure shake from the distant explosion. His communicator crackled with automated distress signals. Then silence. The Vigilance is gone, he said quietly to his remaining Marines. They had fought for 30 minutes, holding the vault against wave after wave of Krillax soldiers. Now only 5 Marines remained standing and all were wounded. The Krillax attack suddenly stopped. Rodriguez heard confused voices in the corridors, then the sound of soldiers retreating. His communicator picked up Krillax military channels in panicked disarray. Their flagship is destroyed. War Master Threxus is dead. All ships, emergency retreat. Withdraw immediately. What about the ground forces? Leave them. We're pulling out now. Rodriguez couldn't believe what he was hearing. The Krillax were abandoning their own soldiers. The remaining enemy warships were fleeing the system, leaving their ground troops stranded. Within minutes, Krillax soldiers throughout the station were surrendering. They had lost their command structure, their fleet support, and their will to fight. 147 Krillax warriors laid down their weapons to 5 wounded human Marines and 43 unarmed scientists. Dr. Velterra emerged from the vault cautiously. The corridors were filled with smoke and battle damage, but the fighting had stopped. She saw Sergeant Rodriguez leaning against a wall, applying medical foam to a plasma burn on his shoulder. You saved us, she said simply. Your ship sacrificed everything to save us. Rodriguez looked at her with tired eyes. That's what we do, ma'am. We don't leave people behind. That's not war. That's just being human. Hours later, the Galactic Council fleet arrived to find a battlefield frozen in time. Debris fields marked where proud Krillax warships had been. The research station showed heavy damage but remained intact. And in the middle of it all, 17 human escape pods drifted in space, their occupants alive but their ship gone forever. Captain Jiwoo Kim floated in her pod, watching rescue ships approach. She had lost her command, lost 37 crew members, but saved 43 innocent lives. In her mind, the math worked out. The aftermath sent shockwaves through the entire Galactic Council. The Krillax Dominion filed formal protests about human barbarism and uncivilized warfare. They claimed the humans had violated every rule of honorable combat. But their expansion into Council territory stopped immediately. They had learned a lesson that Earth's predators had taught their prey millions of years ago: some targets bite back harder than expected. The council held emergency sessions to discuss the incident. Some species were deeply uncomfortable with human methods. The humans fought dirty, used tactics that civilized species considered beneath them, and showed a willingness to die that seemed almost insane. But Dr. Velterra and the Zytharian delegation proposed something unexpected: a formal defense pact with humanity. Other species might find humans unsettling, but Velterra understood the truth. Better to have them as friends than enemies. They came when no one else could, she told the council. They fought when victory was impossible. They died to save strangers. What else could we ask from an ally? The measure passed by a narrow margin. Humanity's reputation in the galaxy shifted. They were no longer just the newcomers, the primitives from a backwater system. They were the species that didn't run, didn't surrender, didn't abandon their commitments no matter the cost. Captain Jiwoo Kim recovered from her injuries in a council medical facility. A galactic reporter asked her what message she had hoped to send by sacrificing her ship. She smiled tiredly. No message. We just don't leave people behind. That wasn't about sending signals or making statements. That's just what humans do. 6 months later, the newly commissioned UNSC Vigilance II began its patrol routes. The ship was bigger, better armed, and bore both the insignia of the Galactic Council and a simple phrase painted on its hull in multiple languages. They shall not pass. The words came from an ancient Earth battle where humans had held a position against impossible odds. Now those words traveled through space, a promise and a warning to the galaxy. The Krillax never raided Council territory again. Other aggressive species noticed and adjusted their plans. The galaxy learned what Earth had known for millennia: humans were persistence hunters. They didn't need to be the fastest or strongest. They just needed to refuse to stop. In the archives of the Galactic Council, the Battle of Viridian Station became required study for military academies across 1,000 worlds. Not because the tactics were particularly brilliant, but because it demonstrated something that many species had forgotten. Sometimes survival isn't about superior technology or overwhelming numbers. Sometimes survival is about being too stubborn to quit, too loyal to abandon your commitments, and too human to calculate the odds before doing what's right. Dr. Velterra kept a piece of debris from the original Vigilance in her office. When other scientists asked why she honored a destroyed warship, she had a simple answer: that ship and its crew taught me something important. In this galaxy we're not alone. And as long as humans are here, we never will be. The stars continued their eternal dance, indifferent to the brief lives that flickered beneath them. But in one small corner of space, 43 Zytharian researchers lived because 43 humans decided that some things were worth dying for. And the galaxy remembered.